This monk robe is one of my favorite pieces to wear. I made it a little over 2 years ago when Violet, my Tabaxi monk character, reached 20th level in Dungeons & Dragons. The best part is that when I came to D&D wearing this, the dungeon master, my friend Nate, looked at me, pointed at me, and said, "Inspiration point." So I got an inspiration point for making this. One of the things that's really, really great about it is that it's fully reversible. Several years ago, I got into making things reversible. I also made a lot of capes. I made reversible capes and robes. So if you see here, what makes it fully reversible is that the ties will work either way. And this part here was sewn before I sewed everything together. So it was this part right here. And then this over here covers the seam. And then this part here, the sleeve comes and folds back to cover the raw edge right there. The other thing that makes this really work is that I sewed through both layers here on the shoulder seams and also on the side seams so that it doesn't bag and do weird stuff like that. Most of the time I wear it the other way around. This satin side acts as a really, really nice lining, and it's actually warmer with the satin side in than it is with the coarse side in. And whenever I really need to be warm, I put a sweater underneath it, and that makes it really, really toasty. In fact, this is my light jacket that I wear most of the time. Last winter, I think I wore it pretty much every day. So I love wearing it a lot, and it's fun that I made it. Now that you've seen the finished product, let's go back to the very beginning when I was tracing pattern pieces. First, what I did is I traced the pattern piece that I wanted to change and marked that center front, so that way when I flipped it over and placed it on that same center front line, I'd have a full front piece. After tracing that, I needed to find the line that I wanted to use instead of the original sloping line. I found that from this other project that I had done, and I pinned where I wanted the line to be. Then I put that line on the pattern piece. Then I was able to finally cut it out. And I had just barely enough fabric. You can see I couldn't even put the sleeve together in one piece. I had to piece it together. There's actually 3 lines drawn on this pattern piece. There's the actual seam line, and then the 2 different lines with seam allowance. I found this piece of fabric in one of my mom's boxes of fabric, and there was no way I was going to be able to go and find more of it. So I had to be very careful and use every single scrap that I could. So I'm ready to sew the shoulder seams. Now, because this fabric looks very similar on the same side, on one side and the other side, they look very, very similar. It's kind of hard to tell which side is the right side and which side is the wrong side. So you just have to pick one, but that means that you have to make sure you don't end up sewing 2 of the same side. So I've double checked that on this one I've got the back tunic on top, because I always like to sew from the neckline down to the shoulder. And then on the other one, I've got the front of the tunic on top. Front of the tunic on top. So this is the second one, because the front of the tunic slants down like this. And the first one I showed, the back of the tunic comes up like that. So just double checking that I have 2 different sides, like I'm sewing them so that I end up with 2 different sides. So that was successful. So I've got this side seam sewn and this side seam sewn, or not side seam, shoulder seam, and it looks like these will match up. So this is my back tunic seam now. My back tunic. And see how I have seams that are both on the side that, well, right now the seams are outside because this is inside out. All right, and then I'll sew the center back seam. So that way I don't accidentally mix up which is the right side and which is the wrong side on these, because then there'll be a seam in them. That'll make it easier. These sleeves are really easy to sew. Normally I have to do like a basting stitch or an easing stitch or whatever, but I've just been able to line up my darts and my dots I normally actually just put little snips in, but I've just been lining those up and everything is just going really nicely. As you can see though, I do have to serge everything, so I'm making sure that I serge my seams when I get the chance. So this is what I did. I safety pinned, you can kind of tell because it's kind of still open right here. I safety pinned my side seams and my sleeve seams together so that way I could get an idea of what it would be like. And then I have this safety pinned in here so that way I can see what it'll look like and that sort of thing. And I realize that it's a little bit see-through, and most people wouldn't probably bother with this, but if I ever want to wear this without having to wear a shirt underneath, I'm going to be bothered. So I'm going to line it with some purple satin, and then I'm going to make it reversible. I think I can make it reversible? What do you think, Bruce? Do you think I can do it? Bruce? Do you think I can do it? Oh, he thinks I can. But he doesn't remember when I used to do this a lot. I used to make things reversible quite a lot, so let's see how it goes. I used this piece of fabric to make a dress a few years ago, and you can see that where I cut out the sleeve leaves just the perfect spot for me to place this pattern piece. So that's really nice. I've already checked that everything will fit. And this piece here, because I'm going to put it on the fold, I'm not going to leave that extra 5/8. I'll actually put it on the fold, the original line it's supposed to have. So I know I have enough, so I'm not going to follow the pattern layout. I'm just going to go down because there's a spot on the fabric and I want to avoid that. So I'm just going to cut out these two pieces and then down there put the sleeve. Two things I need to take care of before I can sew on this satin, besides changing my needle. Wait a minute, did Rosa change the needle? Let's look. Oh, this is hard to read. I think this might be a ballpoint needle, because she was sewing on a ballpoint needle earlier. This is very hard for me to read, at least in the camera angle. Well, I am going to put it here. I had these ones in, and as you can see, they're very big. A 90 or a 14, that's pretty large. This one right here is a 70, I actually don't remember what the other number is. 7010, okay. All needles have two numbers, I don't know why. Okay, so I'm going to put the needle in, push it up as far as I can, and then put it in. Now the other thing I'm going to do is use different pins. So I actually have two magnetic pin cushions. This one has my quilting pins and this one has my ultra fine pins. So when I buy them, these ones, they're both Dritz, but you can get other brands too. So these are quilting pins, 131Q, I guess. And then these are ultra fine glass head pins, number 172, I guess, at least for Dritz. So I use them because they are actually finer, so they don't snag the satin. And satin, since it uses the kind of weaving process that has the thread float over quite a bit, it gives it that sheen. Here's some satin. That's what gives it the sheen. It floats quite a lot. So it can also snag, and then you notice it a lot when it snags, because it will pull on one of these threads and then it won't be very shiny in that specific area, and it not being shiny actually brings a lot of attention to it. So I'm going to use a finer needle, finer pins, and I need to change my thread. I don't know where this thread color is. I'm going to have to go find it and probably make a new bobbin. So I made a mistake. There was a part of me that said, this is not a synthetic fabric, and another part of me said, yes it is, and I had this on a high iron setting and I burned a hole through it. So I'm working on matching it up so that I can patch it so it'll come down like this, trying to make it match the pattern direction and everything. So I'm gonna pin it from this side here so that I can make sure I sewed through the hole, or sewed over the hole, and hopefully that will work. Hopefully I can. So I've never had to do this before. Not that I don't know how to do it in theory. That way, it's just on the corner, it's on the side, but that way I can fix it before things get bad. In fact, use my ruler here. Maybe draw a straight line with my, draw a straight line with my, this thing. See if that. You can barely see it, but at least that would be enough for me to be able to draw a straight line. Alright, so now that I've sewn this on, I can bring this down and trim it, and I think that it looks okay, except for right there it's a little bit, but it's the bottom. I'm a little worried about it, but it's alright. So now I'm going to flatten it. I'm going to trim around. I really did not measure this well. Well, I originally thought it'll be fine. So what I'm gonna do now, just have that corner. I am going to serge this right here and get that out, and then this will be just a corner that is different. But look at how that pattern matches up pretty good. Not perfectly, but still pretty good. So now I'm ready to do the sleeves and the side seams, sleeve seams and the side seams. I first serge this. Most of the time I'll do that afterwards when it's in a circle, but I want to be able to choose which way I'm going to have the seams flop when I get there. So I've done it beforehand so that way I'll have the freedom to do that. And then I had to fix this part first because this was part of the seam. It's the bottom corner. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this now. So I had to cut out some more trim pieces for the side of the front. I'm folding it in half and I'm going to baste it together right now. I'm going to sew this one in differently than the way that I sew in the trim on the neck and well, I guess just around the neck. Because I'm making it reversible, I can do that. And I think this will be the easiest way. So I forgot that these need to be finished on the end like this before. So it's a good thing it's basted because that makes it easy to unpick the stitches. I'm going to unpick. I'm going to only unpick it up a few inches. Maybe one more is enough. Because the stitches are so long, they just come out super easy. Enough for me to turn this around this way. There we go. And sew it. I'm gonna need to clip the corner so it'll turn out really nicely. There we go. And then I'm gonna top stitch it because I think I'm gonna top stitch everything. But when I do the top stitching for the rest of it, it's gonna have two colors, so. There we go. What is that? Oh, that's something I took out, I think, and it got stuck. Got stuck on here too. This is the problem with having so many threads around. And even though I've got the trash over here on the side, sometimes I just don't get them all away. And this stuff frays like crazy. So I have enough basted here that it's not going to fight me too much. So I can go ahead and put this right here. This is the side. I need to make sure that it is up 5/8 of an inch. Now it goes this way. So what's going to happen is I'm going to sew the purple on top of it. It's going to get sandwiched in between. And then when I turn it inside out, this part, that'll go up like that. And that part will pop out just like that. And it'll look really nice. So I need to make sure that this is 5/8 up though. And then I need to be very careful when I'm sewing it that I sew just right here and don't grab this part right there. So I'm ready to sew this, and I have the trim piece sandwich in between right here. It might have been easier for me to actually sew this bottom and then come back and put the trim in, but I know that I can do it. But if you're not sure you can, then I would come in 5/8 of an inch right here and sew across the bottom, and then come back and sew down, and then you can get a nice corner right there. I'm gonna have to trim this corner, and that's the reason why I don't just want to sew across here and across there like that. So here goes. Oh, the other thing to note is that I have 2 different colors of thread. In the top I've got the purple, and in the bottom I've got the white. I don't know how much of a difference it's going to make, but for top stitching I'm definitely going to need to have it that way. But for now, for sewing this seam, I'm going to do my best to match the top and the bottom with where I'm sewing it. So as I approach this, I'm going to be pushing down so I can feel. I'll lift that. I just have one more stitch and I'll be over the edge. Yeah, I'm over the edge now. Just for fun, I'm going to back stitch one and then back forward one more stitch. Okay. Now as I turn this, now that I know that this is taken care of, I am going to push that, I'm going to push that corner up so you can see right here. I'm just going to fold that corner up. And then pull this back down. It's difficult with satin, so I'm gonna press really, really hard right here to make sure that satin stays in place. Looks like I got past it just fine. I think I didn't grab anything. I'll check it before I turn it inside out. On the other side, it's going to be a bit easier because I can actually push it out of the way, and then I'll show you in just a second. So I'm coming up on one of the side seams right here, and I designed it so that the seams are going to be going opposite directions, the way that the serge seam goes. That's to help reduce on bulkiness, but it also makes it so that like they just kind of lock in place. However, it means that this one is going out like that, so I like to be really careful as I'm approaching to make sure that it doesn't accidentally go this way and create more bulkiness. So I'll get to where I'm close, and I'll just double check and make sure it's flat. Sometimes I'll even lift the presser foot. That's one of the reasons I always make sure my needle is in the down position. I like sewing where the needle down is where it will be when it stops. So as I approach it, now that it's underneath the presser foot, it's not going to cause me a lot of problems, so I can take my pin out. And I can take this one out now. And that's that. That way, here, if I sew a little bit more, you can see that it stayed nice and flat here and nice and flat there. So alright, I'm approaching the other corner now. What I'm gonna do, actually, I'm gonna remove this pin right here. I'm gonna scooch this over so I don't even have to think about it. I'm going to sew to the end 5/8. There we 5/8? So that's perfectly 5/8. And now that it's sewn, I'm going to push it back. Make sure it's all lined up and nice. And now I'm going to turn it. I'm going to start sewing. I'm even going to backstitch that. And let's see how it goes. The moment of truth. Look how this came out. Looks nice. And it came out, I'm going to have to trim down here, but I'm just testing to make sure that I didn't end up sewing through it. So it looks really good. Let's see the other side. Actually, the combination of these two fabrics is heavy. The satin is really slidey, but it's light, and this is heavier, but it kind of like, it didn't feel heavy until I put the two of them together. Alright, here's the other one. And I know this one will be good because I used that other method. Yeah, that looks nice. That looks good. I just realized though that I haven't figured out what I'm going to do for ties, and I kind of needed to put the ties in this seam right here. So, yay, unpicking. But first I had to figure out what I'm doing with my ties. I've got to try this on and figure that out. It's a brand new day, and I think I figured out how I'm going to take care of the ties. I only need one set. I don't need to do a further down one to be able to make it sturdy enough to wear, because it's going to have one on the inside and outside. So what I did is, this is the band trim for the top, and I measured along to make sure that I have enough, and then whatever was left over I cut off, and then from that I cut off the selvage, because for the band the selvage will get used up in the seam allowance, but for these ties my seam allowance is going to be a lot smaller. So first I trimmed off the seam allowance, well, not the seam allowance, I trimmed off most of the selvage. I know at least this much will get eaten up in the seam allowance because I'll do 1/4 of an inch, and then I folded it in half and I cut it in half lengthwise and cut it in half crosswise as well, so that I now have 4 ties. Now the easiest way to make this all work is to use some ribbon right here and put that in. So I'm going to fold it in half, and so this across the top and then down, but I'm going to sandwich in here a piece of ribbon so that it'll be really easy to turn it inside out. So I'm going to go ahead, sew at 1/4 of an inch, or at least at the edge of the presser foot, and needle down. I need a backstitch. Okay, and then turn it. Perfect. Now as I sew this, I'm going to kind of pull my ribbon this way to make sure that it doesn't get caught. I have plenty of space because the ribbon is very thin. I'm just still going to give it that little extra. There we go. And then I'm going to go back up here. That got really nasty looking. I need to hold my threads better. I'm going to cut the corner off. Okay. Then I can turn this inside out pretty easily by just pulling on the ribbon. I want to make sure it gets turned around here first, because if I just keep pulling, it's going to create a lot of tension. So sometimes I need to use, do I have a pencil or something? Oh, this will work really well, actually. Instead of using I put it around like this and see if that can, nope, that's not going to be good enough. Let's try, oh, I bought a bodkin for this reason. Like, I literally haven't opened it yet. Normally this is really great for threading things through, but it will also be pretty good for trying to get this to come out. Okay, pull on you. Once this is starting to turn inside out up here, all I have to do is pull. See how now that's starting to go in right there? Now it should be as simple as, I can take that out, pulling this along. This is a lot smaller than I thought it would be. It's a lot tighter than I thought it would be. And then I can start to pull this end off. Maybe I need to trim this. Yeah, maybe I do. If I trim this just a hair, oh, it's already really small. Oh, but it's small, it's tighter up here, so I'm gonna trim it just a hair. Because where it's getting stuck is where the seam allowance is trying to get in. Yeah, that's working much better. Maybe I just need to use this bodkin, actually. It's actually working really well for getting everything out. Now I can pull this along. Yeah, this is working really well now. And I can just, once I get to this point, it's a lot easier. And then I just cut my ribbon off like that. And you can barely even see that there was anything. So, and if I really want to, I can go back in with my bodkin right here. And I can get that corner to come out. I don't think it's going to come out any more than that, but that looks pretty good. Then just get my bodkin out. And now I've got this tie. I would just iron that, or if I want to, I can just top stitch that if I want to make it like extra secure or something like that, but that's how you do a tie. So I need to add in the ties at the armpit. Now I forgot to do this beforehand, and so I should have done it when I was sewing up the side seams, but I didn't. So I've already sewn and serged this, so I unpicked the sewing right here. I'm going to put in one of the straps as far as I can go because it's hitting the serging right now. And then I'm going to get on the inside of this. Right there. And pin this in place. Maybe it would be worth it to undo the serging and have it all the way through. Well, if that's the case, then I need to snip through here. And I can reserge this. Let's see if I can get through. I hate it when I forget things and I have to unpick, especially when I've already serged. Sometimes if I go on from the back side and go through these threads right here, I can get through. Actually, I'm going to take that out. Let's see if I can open this up. Yeah, it's getting there. I had to serge this stuff because it frays like crazy. Like crazy. Okay, I think I might have enough that I can stick this through now. Use my bodkin. Okay. Come on, go through. I think almost through to the other side. There we go. Okay, so now I've got this all the way through and I can adjust. It's exactly where I want it. Okay, now that I've got it all the way through, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna pin it. And you can see that right here, from here to here, is where I need to resew. I'm going to go on top of that and backstitch first, just to make sure that I have everything, so I don't have any holes later. There we go. I really want this nice and secure. Backstitch over it again. Now, because I don't necessarily want to have to serge everything again, I'm just going to zigzag over this section. Make my zigzag a little bit wider so that it matches. That looks good, that looks good. It looks like it was originally there in the first place. And then that tie is really secure. So right now I'm trimming a 1/4 inch off of this band, the part that's sandwiched in between my seam allowances, just because it's very, very bulky. And then when I get to the bottom here, I'm also going to cut the corner, just because it's very, very bulky. Okay, and then same thing here, I'm going to cut this corner so that way this comes out better, and it's just, you've got a lot less bulkiness in it. Before I turn it inside out, and I'm going to top stitch everything. So it's taking me a long time to do this top stitching because I don't want either color to peek out from the other side. So the satin is fighting me because it's slippery, and then this yellowish fabric is fighting me because it doesn't like folding. So I end up rolling this part right here, holding it, and then using that for tension to pull on either side so I can get it just right. Now that I'm coming towards this this part, it's not so bad. Okay, this part is a little bit easier in some ways because I can pull on the fabric here and pull on the fabric there on the bottom because it's sewn in tightly. So that's much easier to do, and I'm almost done with it. Let's see how it looks. That looks good. I think I did a pretty good job of not having too much peek through. And then this part here, that looks good on this side, and it looks good on that side. So I think that's pretty successful. Now I'm going to do some stitch in the ditch. I have my seams going opposite directions where the way that they're pressed down, and I'm just going to bring them next to each other and sew right in the middle of the seam. As you can see right here, it doesn't show up that much, not on either side, because it's just right there in the seam, but it will help keep, this is the shoulder seam, it'll help keep the satin from slipping around too much and make it fall on the body better. So I've done the I did stitch in the ditch in the shoulder seams and in the side seams, not through the sleeves, but just so that things will hold together. And I have basted around the neckline Now this serves two purposes. One is so that I don't have less to like manage in how many layers are coming together, but also because if I need to ease it a little bit, I have that all ready to go. I can pull on one of the strings and ease it a little bit because this is cut on a diagonal, and so it will stretch out a lot more because it has a little bit of the bias in it. Now, I already have measured that this trim piece is going to be the right size. So what I want to do is find the middle of it and start at the middle. So I'm going to fold it in half. Okay. And I'm going to snip on both sides. There we go. And I am going to start putting it on here. Let's see. I have a middle seam. I have a middle seam on this one. So I'm going to start there and begin the process of pinning this down. Now before I serge this, because I've sewn the band on, and maybe I shouldn't be serging it, but I like how it will compress things in and also trim it at the same time. But before I do that, this part right here is going to cause me problems if I don't snip it. So this is the part where it's very, very curved, right in here. So I'm going to make sure that I snip this. Man, this is really thick actually. Oh, because there's a seam there. I'm going to snip these. So that this can go very, very flat. See how those open up like that? It's because it's got that curve in it. Okay. And then I need to do the other, that part, see this part is straight, but then this part right here, you can see how it curves. So I'm gonna want to snip that as well. Maybe I'll have to do right there. It needs another snip on this end, this one right here. It's just so close together, and it needs something else right here. But getting through that because of the seam is kind of crazy. Maybe I need to do some more on this side. Oh no, I got pretty close on that one. See, now if I pull it all flat, everything is flat. Except for right there. Let's go. Oh wait, it's good enough. Here, I'll just give it a little bit more. I don't want to go right up to the seam. I want to go pretty close. And that one's pulling a little bit, so maybe another bit right here. There we go. So I can pull everything nice and straight, and that looks good. So in order to get a really nice corner, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend it back right like this. So what I've done is I've bent it, I've folded it back like this, right? But then I've made where I'm going to have the seam allowance up. And then I'm going to sew straight here. But before I do that, I'm going to, you know what, I don't need as much of this. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that. I'm going to put in my thing, my tie. Come on. There we go. And I want my tie to come out perpendicular to here. So I'm going to finagle it so it is perpendicular. And pin that in place as well. Come on. It's a lot of layers. Okay. And then I'm gonna sew it right there. I really want to imagine an imaginary line going through this. Okay. Whoa, that is tight. There we go. There we go. And then, when I turn this inside out, look how nice that's gonna look. And then on this side, oh, I might have to work something out with that, but did it get connected here? What was connected? Well, I'll figure that out. Maybe I'll need to trim some of this. I didn't have a problem with the other side at all. Or maybe I did and I just don't want to admit it. Oh yeah, I have the same problem on the other side. I'm gonna have to probably trim these. Well, I'll work it out. So this is what's working. So I did go ahead and trim it, and then I trimmed off the serge part, and that is coming out to look really nice. Since what I'm going to do next is I'm going to fold this over and then place it on my sewing line and then sew along there. But this looks really good now that I've trimmed it. So this is what I did. I'll do it on the other side. Okay, first of all, I don't have to, this one already has an angle on it, so I haven't had to worry about that. So I'm going to go up, I'm going to trim off this corner, and I don't need this part right here, so I'm going to go ahead and trim that off as well. So that when it's turned inside out, I still got a little bit to trim there, I guess, because I think I got that a little higher. It looks pretty good, but it does need to be trimmed a little bit more, it looks. And oh, it's because I'm trying to not get the I don't want to cut the strap because I want as much stability as possible. So I'm going to come in on either side of it. There we go. It's pretty good. I think it's because this part is a little higher up than I wanted it to be, but it will cover up most of it. There we go. Pretty good. So I went ahead and did something maybe helpful, maybe not. I went ahead and basted this and this fold instead of ironing because I'm not getting a really crisp line when I iron because I had to have it on such a low setting. Otherwise, I end up burning a hole in the fabric. So I just went ahead and basted it. And maybe this will work and maybe it won't, but maybe for this type of fabric, it's the best thing to do. And now what I'm going to do is I've got to bring this down, get it to cover the stitches and pin it. I don't know if I want to sew it from this side or this side. This is the more fancy side, so maybe from that side. So I've got to really pin it well and make sure I cover up that stitch. I just decided to go for it. I mean, I've got a pretty clear line, and with this not bothering me, just line it up. This is easier than the stitch in the ditch was, actually. I'm surprised. Let's see how it's turning out. Oh, it looks good. It's looking good. All right. Step 1 is baste at 1 inch around the edge. Make sure that while you're doing this that you stretch it. The reason why you want to stretch it is so that it'll pull them through at the same amount, because the feed dogs will pull things through faster than on the bottom than on the top. Step 2 is trim off this section. Step 3? Step 3 is to fold this over and baste it. Stitch. Okay. Now step 4, I don't even have to worry about taking my stuff out. I'm gonna just move this over to 1 inch and then baste at 1 inch again. Oh, whoops. Got caught in there. Now, what I'm going to do is fold on that basting line and use it as my guide for the thing. The reason why I needed to do all of those steps is to keep this satin down. I sewed a little bit extra because I started off with the basting stitch because I didn't realize I hadn't changed over to a regular stitch. So I can take out these basting stitches pretty easily. And that seemed the easiest way for me to get this kind of cuff. And I did it because these sleeves are a little bit long on me, so I could have done that. Otherwise, I could have just sewn on another band. But I am practically out of fabric. I only have this much fabric left, like literally this much, and then this piece right here. Like, that's it. And if I want to try and make a belt out of it or anything like that, that would be what I have to do, but I basically used almost every scrap. This is me putting on the finished product over 2 years after making it. I have found that it is easier for me to make sure the ties are done before I put it on. Sometimes I'll put the ties on after, but then my elbows seem to not have enough room. So I'm just making sure the ties are nice and tight. And then I'll just put it over my head. Like I said before, that satin lining makes it really easy to put on. When I want to be really, really warm, I'll wear a sweater underneath, and that makes it very, very toasty. It acts as like an insulation layer. I once thought that I was going to wear this as a shirt, but because of its heavy nature, it really works well as a light jacket. So I do wear it as a light jacket quite often, and I'll wear it to the store, I'll wear it to work. It works wearing the extra layer underneath because it is sort of loose, so there's enough space in there for me to still be able to move around. But like I said, it is very, very warm when I wear it. Let me be clear, sometimes I wear this as just a light jacket without the sweater. The sweater is just really nice when I want to be extra, extra warm, like when it's freezing temperatures. But it's nice in the spring and in the fall. And then in the winter time, I just wear the sweater too, and it's great in the winter as well. I will admit that I don't often wear it with the satin side out. The number one reason is that it's kind of coarse to have that beige yellow fabric up against my skin, even though it's just really up against my arms. And it's a little bit uncomfortable, and it's a little bit hot because with both fabrics, it is rather warm. However, when I have worn it with like a belt around it, people tell me it's very nice looking, I look fancy. And then they ask me where I got it, and I'm like, oh, I made this. And they're like, oh my goodness, that's so amazing.